Whiskey. All you need to know about whiskey in 10 minutes or less. Whiskey is a liqueur made from fermented grain mash, distilled to a high alcohol content and aged in barrels made of oak. Characteristics. Whiskey usually has an alcohol content of around 40%, but some versions called cask strength or barrel proof can be much stronger because they are boiled directly from the barrel, just as they came out, with no added water. These whiskies have up to 60% alcohol by volume or more. Ingredients. The primary ingredient in whiskey are grains. Different types of grains are used depending on the kind of whiskey. For example, barley is common in Scotch and Irish whiskey. Corn is a main grain in bourbon, and rye is used for rye whiskey. Some whiskies also use wheat, but it's less common. Origins. The techniques of distillation came into both Scotland and Ireland. Each country claimed the title of inventors of whiskey. In the year 1608, the Old Bushmills distillery was licensed in Northern Ireland, making it the world's first official whiskey distillery. It also gained popularity across the continent. In the colonization, the Irish and Scotch brought their knowledge of whiskey distillation with them. Whiskey became so popular in the United States that many distillers used whiskey as a form of currency during the American Revolution. Even George Washington was a whiskey distiller, distilling as much as 300,000 barrels of rye whiskey per year at his plantation. Until 1823, the distillation of whiskey in Scotland and Ireland was illegal. Shortly after the legalization of distilleries in Europe, the column steel was added to the distillation process. Varieties. Produced with at least 51% corn, bourbon is a type of whiskey that is made exclusively in the United States. However, while it can be made anywhere in the country, Kentucky is considered the birthplace and the heart of bourbon production. Approximately 95% of bourbon is produced there. This whiskey is spelled without the letter E, and just like bourbon, Scotch whiskey can only be made in Scotland, aged for a minimum of 3 years in oak barrels, and boiled at a minimum of 40% alcohol by volume. Also, it is usually made by malting a single grain type, although there are some exceptions. To be recognized as Irish, a whiskey law states that it has to be produced in Ireland. This includes both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Some historians claim that 19th century Irish distillers added the letter E to whiskey to distinguish themselves from the Scotch that was at the market at the time. They ruled the whiskey world in the 19th century. However, after war, only one company was left and 2 distilleries, New Middleton and Bushmills. This whiskey is known for its spicy flavor. American rye whiskey must be made from a mash that has at least 51% rye. The other 49% are usually other grains like corn and malted barley, while Canadian rye whiskey doesn't have a minimum requirement for rye content. This is a grain that grows in northern climates, popular in Russia, Germany, Canada, and the United States. Production process. First, malting. The grains are soaked in water. It's important that the grains aren't allowed to sprout, since that would add unwanted flavors to the whiskey. Right before they start sprouting and growing, the grains are taken out of the water and heated up to stop the germination process. Second, mashing. In this process, the grains are placed into large tanks full of warm water. Then, they are mixed to extract the sugars. Third, fermentation. The mash is transferred to fermentation vessels, and yeast is added to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. This process lasts from 48 to 96 hours, resulting in a beer liquid called distiller's beer or wash, around 7 to 10% of alcohol. 4. Distillation. The resulting mash is distilled in pot or column stills. Alcohol vaporizes and goes up through the still, becoming liquid again in a condenser. The alcohol content in this process is about 20 to 25%. 5th. Aging. The distilled liquor is transferred to oak barrels for aging. It must be aged for a specific period of time, but that depends on the type of whiskey. During this period, the liquor interacts with the wood, extracting all its flavors. Nearly all whiskeys are aged in wood. However, corn whiskey may be aged or unaged depending on the desired result. 6th. Bottling. The aged whiskey is filtered to remove impurities and prevent it from becoming cloudy when cold water or ice is added. Then, it is bottled and labeled for distribution at a minimum of 40% alcohol by volume. When only one barrel is bottled at a time, it's labeled a single cask or single barrel. Regions of production. Whiskey is produced in several regions around the world, each with its unique characteristics. While Scotland is the biggest producer of whiskey in the world and has been for at least 100 years, countries like the United States produce approximately 37 million cases of whiskey each year. Canada produces over 21 million, with 3 high-selling brands: Crown Royal, Black Velvet, and Canadian Cloth. Irish whiskey was once one of the most popular spirits in the world. Unfortunately, a long period of decline from the late 19th century significantly damaged the industry. While Scotland can count over 100 distilleries, Ireland currently only has 7 in operation, and 3 of them are relatively new with no established products in the market yet. Regulations. Whiskey production is heavily regulated, and the standards depend on the country. In the United States, bourbon must be made from at least 51% corn, distilled to no more than 80% alcohol by volume, and aged in new charred oak barrels. In Scotland, whiskey must be made in that country, aged for at least 3 years, and bottled at a minimum of 40% alcohol by volume. Irish whiskey must also be aged for 3 years in one cask and distilled in Ireland. Popular brands. This is one of the largest and most famous whiskey brands in the world. It started with John Walker, who sold whiskey in his grocery store in Scotland in 1820. His son Alexander took over the business in 1857. He expanded the brand's popularity and introduced the iconic square bottle design and label in 1867. After Alexander's death, the business was passed down to his sons, Alexander II and George. They are responsible for the illustration of the striding men, as well as naming the whiskies after the color of the label on each bottle. The first of these newly branded whiskies were Johnnie Walker Red Label and Johnnie Walker Black Label. The most popular American whiskey brand was established in the 1830s and founded in Lynchburg, Tennessee, by Jasper Neat and Jack Daniel, making it the oldest registered distillery in the United States. During the Prohibition era in the United States, which lasted from 1920 to 1933, the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages were banned in the country. This period impacted many distilleries, including Jack Daniel's. After Prohibition ended, despite the adversities, Jack Daniel's eventually recovered its status as a leading whiskey brand. If you haven't tried it yet, you should do it and judge by yourself. And if you want to know more about a specific or your favorite liquor, leave a like and a comment below.